Attention, please. The May And for those that have heard the news, I just want to take a moment of silence and remember the 14 families in Texas who have lost their children. So. Thank you. Since we're now in session, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Praley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jimmy Praley. I serve as counsel to the board. At the beginning of every meeting, I make a few brief announcements. The first is that the commissioners before you tonight are part-time public servants. They have other outside interests. When they know they have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest, they recuse themselves. However, they don't know who's going to appear from the public on any given matter. So if you do believe that any commissioner or commissioners, as the case may be, have a conflict of interest, you need to announce that when your case is called. We'll make a decision at that point. If you don't make that announcement when your case is called, we'll proceed forward under the assumption that there is no conflict. The only other announcement I have tonight regards or pertains to our rules and regulations. Our rules and regulations state that the chairman, for the purpose of judicial economy, can designate the ruling on admissibility of evidence and testimony to counsel. The chairman has done that. So in an event where there is an objection to the admissibility of testimony or the admissibility of any evidence, the chairman may turn to me and I may make the ruling on the admissibility of the same. And with that, I will turn it over to our Chief Inspector, Wayne Harris, who can call the first case for the evening. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Praley. First case is Los Chaparritos, known as Bellows Company, LLC. Ricardo Bello Serrano, managing member. Ricardo Bello Alvarado, Jr., member. Sean Hicks, member. Inspector is Mark A. Muckelbauer. This is an upgrade to a full entertainment license, location of 3029 Solomons Road, Edgewater, Maryland, 21037. It's a Class H license with beer, wine, and liquor, and presently has requesting entertainment and Sunday license. The restrictions are dated 12/14/2021. Entertainment is strictly to multiple TVs only. Anyone wishing to testify, please raise your right hand. Okay. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record. Have a seat, please. Yeah, at the bottom there's a red button.
My name is Ricardo. My address is Tutton Court, Annapolis, Maryland, 21403.
Okay, thank you.
Sean Hicks, 1658 Woodtree Court East, Annapolis, Maryland, 21409.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Praley, all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris. Gentlemen, this is your opportunity to present your case to the board. I assume you're going to proceed by way of proffer, so I'll just let you present your case and tell the board what you're seeking tonight.
Well, I would like to have the upgrade license because being a Mexican restaurant, a lot of people ask me for karaoke or to bring a mariachi and things like that. And a lot of people, they ask me, we need the karaoke here. There is not something in Edgewater. So that's why I'm here.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hicks, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just that it was an oversight, that it should have been added originally, and we overlooked it, so we'd like to amend it and have it added, please.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, any questions of the applicants?
No questions.
Commissioner Duffy.
I have only one question in reference to the operation hours. When you change hours doing karaoke or anything, would it be requested of us as a board to extend your hours of operation?
Well, what I understand, I can sell alcohol until 2 a.m., but I always stop selling alcohol at 12:30 because I want to make sure nobody's in the restaurant after 2 o'clock. Like they told me, I'm following the rules all the times, and I want to keep doing just.
Okay, thank you. You answered the question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Snoops, any questions?
No questions.
Gentlemen, I note that you also have several, that you have a petition in support of this. Would you like that to be admitted into evidence and become part of the official record?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. That will be admitted. Anything else you two would like to add?
Nothing. I'm going to be happy if I get the upgrade license.
You'll go dancing out? Yeah, I just have a question.
Yes.
Your hours, you said you
Say again?
stopped serving alcohol at 2 a.m.?
No, well, I start serving alcohol at 12:30, almost
12:30.
1,
Okay.
because I want to make sure that people get out of the restaurant before 2 o'clock.
Yep.
Like, that's why they told me after 2 o'clock, they don't want to see anybody in the restaurant, only employees.
Okay, so you just forgot to apply for this, is that pretty much what
Correct.
you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes.
Is it going to affect the neighborhood at all where you are?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Not at all?
Not
Okay.
at all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do either of the other commissioners have any questions? No?
No.
Hearing none? Mr. Chairman?
I move that we grant the petition and the new license, and look for a second.
I second it.
I hear a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's carried. Good luck. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. And I want
You're
to
welcome.
follow the rules.
Congratulations. Okay. Excuse me. Next case, Thursday's Steak and Crab House, known as S&J Riverfront, Inc., Stanley G. Fletcher, President, Secretary, and Treasurer. The inspector is Jim Ford. This is a Class D license for beer, wine, and liquor.
Mr.
With
Callis,
Nancy-
would you waive reading?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Mr. Callis. Anyone wishing to testify for and against, please come forward. Raise your right hand. Raise your right hand, sir.
Go ahead, raise your right hand.
Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
Stanley Fletcher, 3848 Glebe Meadow Way, Edgewater, Maryland, 21037.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Praley, all yours.
Thank you. Mr. Callis, normally would be the time, this would be the time where we would ask for the reading of the inspector's report. Would you like that read, or would you
No,
waive the
no.
reading of the inspector's report?
No,
Okay.
sir. Thank
All
you.
right. Yep, absolutely.
We'll submit as to the statements contained in the report and in the citation as
Okay,
well.
great, thank you. At this point, I'll let you proceed by way of mitigation, and if the commissioners have any questions, I'll have them address those as well, okay?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Fraley. We also put in a request before the board to officially change the trade name of the establishment, which was the basis of this particular citation. Sir, we would request the board's approval to trade the trade name of this establishment to Stan and Joe's Riverside, which it has been really in operation since its inception. So there was a disconnect between the designation of the previous trade name, the establishment that was purchased by Mr. Fletcher, was known as Thursday's Steakhouse. He filed the application. When the application was filed, he did not recognize that there was a requirement to officially change the trade name of the entity. But this particular business has always operated as Stan and Joe's Riverside. I mean, there was no effort to conceal, hide, or confuse. It was just taken, it was just inadvertence and brought to their attention. I then filed a letter to the board, I think 2 months ago, requesting that the board approve the change in the trade name.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Callis. Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Yeah, just a couple clarification. There was I'm just trying to figure out where the disconnect was. Obviously, you had it set up one way. We were telling you to change it to be compliant, correct? Is that pretty much as you understand
What
it?
happened was approximately 3 years ago,
Yeah,
the application was filed, and it reflected the trade name of the previous business operation, which sold to Mr. Fletcher, to his corporate entity. They immediately, did all of the wonderful things they've done to this establishment to transform it, Mr. Chairman, into a quality, community-oriented restaurant serving that particular community and deal, and bringing some prosperity to that area as well. It's a very unique location. I'm sure the board will know about it. They began to operate. And they operated until the citation was given that said, look, you're not Thursday Steak and Grill, you're operating under a different name. And so immediately, Mr. Fletcher called me. I sent a request to the board requesting a change in the trade name. But it has never been anything other than Stan and Joe's Riverside, ever, since they acquired this in 2018. Just missed it.
well, I guess, then why are you here?
That's why we're here.
Okay. But from 3 years ago, it's my understanding that we've tried to get you to do that, to make the change.
Well, I've made inquiry.
And that's, I think, why you're here, because,
I made inquiry to Mr.
Sure.
Fletcher about that,
okay,
Mr. Chairman, and I believe he can address how the exchange of information took place and why you were confused.
I was just never quite clear how the process was supposed to go. I thought that whenever we had like a license renewal, we could just change it on there and have it done that way administratively. But I was never clear how the process should go, other than to have either Nick call you guys or just us tell the people at the board. And if I was mistaken, then it's on me, and I apologize.
okay. I have no other questions.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions?
I have no question.
Commissioner Snoops?
I have no questions.
Mr. Callis, Mr. Fletcher, anything you all would like to add?
Just to add, if I can, to the commissioners, this establishment has had no prior history, no prior violations of any kind, no operating violations. They run a responsible, first-class restaurant operation, survived through the pandemic, and this administrative error has now come before the board. We hope that in the board's decision with respect to allowing for the request for the change of trade name will also show some leniency with respect to finding this operation, as I said, who has no previous violations before this board.
Thank you, Mr. Callis.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
I have no questions. Anybody else?
I have no question.
No questions. Okay, I'm just going to, I'm looking at a lot of documents, and I'm not going to belabor it. Our people have tried to explain, at least from our standpoint, we don't have an opportunity to make a testimony at all, but it probably should have been done on a more timely basis. That's what I'm going to say.
Of
Okay,
course,
so
Mr. Chairman.
I am going to fine, because of that, $100 and court costs, okay?
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah.
may, Mr. Pearlie, the issue with respect to the approval of the new change of name, trade name.
Sure. That's not before the board for consideration tonight, but what we will do, once the fine is paid, I believe administratively, that can be changed. Am I correct, Ms. Hagner? Yes. Okay. So long as the fine gets paid, we can change the trade name administratively. Okay?
Thank you.
Can we?
Thank you.
So
Thank
there
you,
was,
sir.
was that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
to back up, was that in the form of a motion?
I'm sorry. It was in the form of a motion, and I'm looking for a second.
I second the motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next case is Tucker's, known as Tucker's LLC. Jeffrey Tucker, member. Preston Blake, senior. Thank you, Mr. Bittner. Anyone wishing to testify for or against, please come forward. Okay, remain standing and raise your right hands. Mr. Tucker, thank you. Mr. Blake, raise your right hand, please. Officers, yep, thank you. Okay, do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you can have a seat. Officers, you can sit, some of you can sit up front. I'm going to ask everybody to please state your name and address. We'll start with the officers in any order at all. Please stand and give your name and address for the record.
Sergeant Justin Duncan, 85 Ivy Drive, Manchester, Pennsylvania, 17345.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Officer Danielle Corrado, it's 253 Wood Oak Court, Montgomery, Maryland, 216.
Thank you.
Officer Joseph Farrell, 201 Windrush Farm Lane, Severna Park, Maryland, 21146.
Thank you.
Corporal Darren Edwards, 1000 Allen Avenue, West River, Maryland, 20778.
PFC Connor Doyle, 374 Carnegie Way, Arundel, Maryland.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tucker,
Jeff Tucker, 8375 Bodkin Avenue, Pasadena, Maryland.
thank you. Mr. Blake,
Preston Blake, 8442 Basilius Road, Pasadena, Maryland, 21122.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Richard Bittner. I represent the licensees.
thank you.
Is that everybody?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Bittner, just preliminarily, you and I had the opportunity to discuss this matter. Are you going to waive the officer's testimony at this point in time? Then we can just proceed to mitigation and questioning of the officers if necessary?
Yes, Mr. Praley, as you know, my clients retained me about 3 weeks ago. We promptly notified the board that we were not going to contest these issues. We offered, in fact, to waive the presence of the officers for judicial economy. We're glad they're here to address any issues that you may have. I've had an opportunity to briefly speak with them. My client has spoken with a number of them, including Lieutenant Shanahan, who we did reach out to 3 times by email, but didn't get a response, and I know he's not here today. But we waive their testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bittner. And I would also note preliminarily that you submitted several exhibits. We'll move those into evidence. Those will be admitted as part of the official record as well.
Thank you.
So at this point, Mr. Bittner, I would turn it over to you if you have any questions of the officers, unless you have anything preliminarily.
Just a point of housekeeping, if
Sure.
you may. Since I did anticipate the officers testifying, and I'm happy to proceed however you do, I do have some exhibits that I intended to put in by way of rebuttal.
Sure.
If I can just move them in at this time, again, for judicial economy, perhaps that would be easier.
Yeah, that works. That works just fine. If you want to explain what the exhibits are as you introduce them, the board will accept them and we can review them. Then we can have you question the officers. If you have any questions, then I'll turn it over to the board to question the officers, and then we'll proceed forward with your rebuttal.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if I may, I'd like to introduce to the board staff. Many of you already know Jeff Tucker and Preston Blake Sr., the owners, operators of Tucker's LLC. And I have to tell you that they're here quite humbly asking for an opportunity to remain licensees and go forward. These gentlemen and their families have invested quite literally their entire futures and fortunes into Tucker's. You'll recall Tucker's was Willie D's previously. It was an eyesore, it was a community problem. And in a moment, I'll show you some photographs and provide you some information that will show you the change that they've made, and I'll bring to your attention the changes that they're going to continue to make. As indicated, we don't contest the issues. Certainly, the board is aware that in any incident, there's always two sides to the story, perhaps more than that. I think I heard once there's the story that was told, the story you want to tell, and then really what happened. But what has happened, and what is most important here, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is what the owners here have done in the 6 weeks or so that this has all come to fruition. And I think once you hear those, and hopefully you'll agree with me, that they deserve to continue to remain in business. There have been no violations since they've taken steps, including meeting with police representatives, meeting with community representatives, having traffic control out for a study, undergoing a whole retooling of their security system, purchasing cameras, a breathalyzer machine. So I think once you see that, you'll feel as I do that they deserve and you should grant them an opportunity. We've moved in our exhibits that were previously filed on about May the 16th, and that, members of the board, you'll note, are 12 letters from community members, community organizations attesting to the type of ownership team that's in place at Tucker's. They're not fly-by-night, they're hand-on, they're there. They've hired, to this point, 20 plus employees. So in addition to their families now being invested both financially and emotionally in this business, their 20 employees and their families likewise are invested in the business and want it to go forward. And you'll get a very good flavor of that from those exhibits and the community groups that have followed them. I won't belabor that. They speak for themselves, and I know you've had an opportunity to look at it, and I thank you for that. If I could move in at this time, and this is the summary, the corporate summary, the LLC summary of Tucker's, reflecting a number of the items that I've just mentioned. If I may pass up 3, they asked them to be marked as Exhibit 13, I believe it would be. Need one for the file?
I'll share.
Here, I have an extra. We have certainly, the chief would like one. I just handed one up to staff.
And Mr. Bittner, you said this is 13.
I believe it would. I filed 1 through 12.
Okay.
Pre-hearing.
All right, this will be admitted as 13.
This was something that Mr. Tucker and Mr. Blake had been working on even before I got involved. They wanted to redirect where Tucker's was going. So they sat down, as I say, with their staff. They met with community representatives, law enforcement representatives. They had discussions with your staff. And emanating from that, these are a number of policies that they put into their corporate resolution, and it's part of their corporate documents, and they intend to follow this as their policy. And that includes, they have in what they've instituted now is all employees that are hired go through about a 7 to 12 day training period, in-house training period. At that point, if they feel that they're qualified, they'll make them an offer of employment, and under their corporate policy, they will have that person TAM certified within 7 days. They have established a zero tolerance policy as outlined, and they have posted signs throughout the establishment reflecting that. And I'll hand up what would be Exhibit B, copies of the signage. As indicated, they've increased their training and management involvement with the staff. They've always had weekly staff meetings. Those staff meetings are placing more of a focus on tips issues as well as crowd controls. And in addition to the weekly staff meetings, there'll be a monthly dedicated meeting to refresh all staff regarding techniques, tips, TAMs, and management control. They're in the process, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, to rebrand Tucker's. You'll note, and I'll hand up, oops, what happened to that? Exhibit A, if I may. These are photos, representative photos of Tucker's. You'll note this is a new, bright, clean establishment, a welcoming establishment. It's not dark and dingy. Significant funds, six-figure funds have been invested for those upkeep in addition. So they are going to protect that investment with a no tolerance policy.
Mr. Bittner, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you here. I just want to make sure that we're clear on the numbering of exhibits. So Exhibit B, which was the sign, are you all right if, for the record, we call this Exhibit 14?
Mr. Purley, however you'd like
Okay.
it. I just marked it alphabetically
Understood.
since they were...
Completely understand. We'll call this 14 for our record purposes, and Exhibit A will be 15. Those will both be admitted.
Thank you. So you'll note in the signage, they're advertising food, they're advertising a friendly operation, family-friendly operation, and to that end, the resolution authorizes, the board will note in paragraph I that the LLC is going to purchase a food truck. They had tried previously, and we believe that's part of what led to these issues. They had food trucks, they advertised food trucks. Candidly, sometimes they didn't show up. Sometimes when they showed up, their product was less than desired by the patrons. It led to disputes among staff, disputes among patrons. So they resolved to simply purchase a food truck. We're in discussions with the county health department in having that properly licensed. We're advised the food truck, being outside, separate and apart, can sell to patrons who then would be allowed to take it inside to consume because we don't have outside parking lot privileges. So we're working towards obtaining more of a food-oriented establishment, as well as ideas of perhaps bring your pet night, and even bring your children to enjoy different food. The owners have recently as well, in response to this matter, upgraded security, changed security. In addition to hiring more and new security, which is reflected in paragraph K, they've posted signs. I'll move in Exhibit 16, which are represented photos of signage that the owners have recently installed in and about the establishment, reminding them and asking them to respect the neighbors. In that same vein, exhibit number 17, representative photos of what resulted after they met with Arundel County Traffic Control. They placed, and wish I had a better camera, but you'll see that there's now no parking signs placed under the stop sign, as well as yellow tape on Water Oak Point Road that wasn't there previously. And that resulted again is with Mr. Tucker and Mr. Preston reaching out affirmatively to traffic control, responding to the issues both that the board and the neighborhood had raised. They previously had a shuttle, which I think I have to commend them. I'm not aware of any other establishment that has a shuttle, a dedicated shuttle, trying to be receptive and responsive to neighborhood concerns and their patrons' concerns, they had offered a shuttle. Wasn't working quite as they had liked, so they've now contracted with a dedicated shuttle taxi Mike. They've passed in the resolution authority to contract with Taxi Mike. They've contracted with Taxi Mike. That'd be Exhibit 18, if the board please. Taxi Mike will pick up patrons within a 15-mile radius. You call him, he comes like an Uber. He'll take you back home, to and fro. They've started using that. You'll see they have signs posted about rides being offered. So that has been a very well received in the last several weeks. They tell me that has cut down on traffic issues, noise issues, and greatly enhanced the enjoyment of the patrons not having to drive. And again, consistent with maintaining a proper house as well as the community standards and the community safety, Mr. Preston, Mr. Tucker purchased a portable breathalyzer machine. The board please, that'd be Exhibit 19.
All right, that'll be admitted.
That they'll make available to any patron who wishes to avail themselves of that. Likewise, they have placed throughout the establishment bottled water that'll be readily available during all times that the establishment is open for free to any patron. I believe, gentlemen, I touched on it, it's worth emphasizing. They've purchased additional security cameras. They now have 9 cameras inside, 3 outside. All of their security officers are trained. They've upped the staff by 2 so that they now have on staff 5 security officers. And they will have no less than 1 security officer on site at all times, and they intend to have 2 Fridays and Saturdays. They've also instituted what I believe is a rather unique carding protocol. That's resolution paragraph M, where any patron under the age of 40 will be asked for identification until they're satisfactorily known or regular in the establishment. In addition to having to provide government-issued ID, they'll have to provide a collateral source of identity, a credit card, a bank card, something like that, backing up that government-issued ID. As touched on, they do a great amount of community outreach. You have that in Exhibits 1 through 12. Touching on that, this was an affair that they held just last week. They opened up the establishment to local Boy Scout troop. They let them use the parking lot. They provided the water, let them have signage, the restrooms, gave them snacks, and the scout had a successful car wash at Tucker's. I believe that would be 21.
I think it's 20, yeah.
20. Sergeant Duncan is here. I did not have an opportunity to speak with him. My clients have reached out to him. I did call him, and he had some administrative issues, so we never could connect. But I think he will agree with me, and if you don't, please let us know that they've made a big improvement. And in fact, you recently forwarded a text to Mr. Tucker indicating that he should keep up the good work.
Imagine that.
Remember the text?
Email.
The email.
Email, sorry. So at this point, I'll move in is Exhibit 21, Sergeant Duncan's email.
Okay, great.
In terms of documentary evidence, I don't believe I have any. Proffer, I don't believe I have any that go to any of the material issues. I would, before perhaps Sergeant Duncan addresses the board, just as a point of the record, a legal point, would ask the board to note that we have, in essence, 3 incidents that generated 4 violations per incident. And those violations, most respectfully, are duplicitous, they overlap, they state much of the same thing. Illegal conduct is a catch-all. So I'd ask the board, when rendering your decision, to take that into consideration and reserve that point as to merger for the record, and certainly ask you to consider what they've done and what they're doing. And I thank you to this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bittner. I think the way to proceed here is we'll now allow Sergeant Duncan to address the board and then the other officers. Then we'll allow council to ask questions of the officers and the board members as well. Then, Mr. Bittner, we'll turn it back over to you for rebuttal, and then we'll allow the commissioners to ask questions of you and the licensees. So, Sergeant Duncan, is there anything that you'd like to say to the board tonight? I appreciate you being here.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for having me. You know, and to basically summarize things, you know, in our line of work, we spent some time at some of the local bars. We spent a little more time at Tucker's than we cared to in the beginning, which was growing pains. We had a new business in the area. You know, they had some things to work out, you know, as new owners and everything like that. And it came to a tipping point. At which point Mr. Tucker and I met for the first time, and you know, there was an issue of a new business owner being concerned that, you know, we were spending so much time at his bar and everything like that. And my concern was, you know, our department's mission statement is to work, part of it is to work in partnership with our community. And one of my big concerns was that we hadn't reached out and we hadn't, I felt, done enough to try and see if there was anything we could do to help to mitigate some of the issues that were going on at Tucker's, which was where I kind of proposed a meeting with Mr. Tucker. And within about, I guess, 10 days, we had that meeting with Mr. Tucker and his partner. And for that week and a half, I racked my brains saying, I'm not a bar owner. I've never run a bar. I don't know how to advise somebody how to kind of fix the problems that they have at their establishment. And I was genuinely surprised, excuse me, and elated when Mr. Tucker and his partner showed up and laid out the changes that they had made in those 10 days. Since we've had that meeting, you know, I made sure we reached out to our traffic engineering, traffic control to try and help mitigate something that's a result of the bar being in the location it is, but not directly the establishment's fault. And that was one of the parking issues at Fort Smallwood and Water Oak Point. And I'm happy to say we haven't been to Tucker's since our last incident, since we had that meeting. We haven't been getting any of the parking complaints, and this establishment's basically done a 180, which I don't know if I had much of a part in that.
You did.
But, you know, I like to think I did, you know, because we don't just want to respond to problems. We want to try and help fix them. And I believe in this situation that we've worked together and we've really made it happen.
Definitely.
All right, thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Bittner, do you have any questions of Sergeant Duncan?
You kidding?
I didn't think you did, but I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Well, I want you to pass the exam and protect the record, but all right. Thank you, Sergeant.
Mr. Chairman, any questions of Sergeant Duncan?
Yeah, I just, picking up some information. There's a lot of work here that we've got to look at. And, but in your capacity with the county, in your position, describe that.
As far as my supervisory role, or?
Yeah.
So I'm a sergeant assigned to Eastern District Platoon 4, which is midnights. I oversee a squad of 10 people. I answer to a lieutenant who's our shift commander. And I'm basically the last line of defense between our officers and sort of the command staff. I oversee, our calls for service, ensuring that they're handled properly, reviewing report writing, everything like that. And we're also tasked with identifying areas for concern, problem areas, things of that nature within our district, and coming up with plans for trying to address, the crime, noise issues, whatever it may be,
Okay.
if that satisfies.
Do these officers behind you report to you? Is that,
So
Pretty
all
much.
of them do, except for Officer Farrell. He was assigned to midnights at one point in time,
All right.
but he's actually assigned to a day work shift.
thank you. No more questions.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions of Sergeant Duncan?
Yes, I have just one question in reference to your comment about problems area that you are assigned to, covering problem area. Did you find that in visiting this particular establishment, Tucker's, that you visit that area in certain time frame in reference to, you're giving a description of your time frame when you work from 12 to 12 or whatever?
Yeah, so
Yes.
our shift is, our midnight shift is from 11 PM to 7:30 AM. And usually within those first couple hours of the night, we would have the parking complaints or possibly a disorderly or something like that at the establishment.
So it was between the first 2 hours of you being on duty?
Yes, it was within those first couple hours. So as far as the establishment goes, it's towards the end of the night for them, but it's first thing in the morning for me, if that kind of
I
makes
understand.
sense.
Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Duffy? Commissioner
No.
Stoops, any questions?
No questions?
All right. Mr. Bittner, I'm assuming no. Are you,
Well, just one thing.
Sure, sure.
Since the meeting, you haven't been called there.
That's correct.
Thank you.
all right, Sergeant Duncan, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Come on up, ma'am. If you wouldn't mind reminding us of your name.
It's Officer Corrado.
All right. All right, officer, what do you want to tell us?
I don't have anything to
Okay.
add.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. I appreciate you being here. Mr. Bittner, do you have any questions?
No, just thank you, officer, for
Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Question, you were involved with on April the 2nd. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
It was an incident that you responded to Tucker's
Yes, sir.
at almost midnight, or actually 11:30, I guess it is, military time, excuse me. Looked like there was a fight involved.
Yes, sir. There was a fight that had occurred before I got there, and then.
And how many people were involved in the fight?
That I don't know, because it was already dispersed when I
Okay.
arrived.
Did you go into the restaurant or the bar?
No, I stayed outside.
Stayed outside, okay. So you can tell me if there was a lot of people involved, or maybe a couple people involved, or,
There was quite a few people outside, but I'm not sure who was involved in the first
Okay.
altercation.
all right, no other questions, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions?
No question.
Commissioner Snoops?
No questions?
Mr. Bittner, anything you want to ask?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Only that I would point out, Chairman, as I understand it, after that incident of April the 2nd, Lieutenant Shanahan actually shut the bar down. He closed it down around 11:30. Without getting into whether that was proper or not, I can tell you that got my client's attention and has been extremely therapeutic to them.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, officer. Sir, if you want to come up. And just remind us your name, sir. Yeah, sorry, your name one more time.
Oh, Officer Farrell?
Okay, Officer Farrell, thanks. Is there anything you'd like to tell the board?
Oh, no, nothing to add. I mean, there's been no issues since that last incident, April 2nd. I haven't heard any problems, so that's all I really have to say.
Okay, thanks for being here. Mr. Bittner, do you have any questions of Officer Farrell?
No, thank you, officer.
Mr. Chairman?
So you haven't been called there recently, correct? How many times have you been called there?
I've been there probably 2 or 3 times
Okay.
in the past. The last time was April 2nd. I haven't heard of any issues since April 2nd.
Okay, prior to April 2nd?
Since April 2nd, I haven't heard of any issues
Okay.
since after April 2nd.
How about from January to April? Was that a routine for you at all?
I mean, 2 or 3 times approximately, I've been out there for calls.
Okay. Right now, I'll pass.
All right. Commissioner Duffy, any questions of Officer Farrell?
No question.
Commissioner Snoops, any questions?
No questions.
All right. Thank you for being here, officer. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, officer.
Sir, come on up. Just go ahead and give us your name again, please.
Corporal Edwards?
All right. Corporal Edwards, anything you want to tell the board?
No, I think Sergeant Duncan pretty much said everything.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Bittner, do you have any questions for Corporal Edwards?
No, no, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Question, same one. How many times had you responded to any calls?
Since they opened up it last July, I would say approximately 4 or 5 times.
Like, how about from January on? this
I've
year?
only personally had to respond out twice.
Okay. And is it, the 2 times you were there, was it the same situation?
Pretty much. One of the instances that was documented was just a fight between family members inside, that the victim didn't want any charges, pressed on his cousin. The other time that wasn't documented, I think it was just multiple fights out in the parking lot that were resolved, before we got there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions of Corporal Edwards?
Was this during the same time frame between 11 and 7, the night shift?
Yes, sir, pretty much. From what I remember, most of the calls happened more towards the closing hours, probably about 1:30 in the morning.
Okay.
At least in my experience.
Okay, thank you. No further question.
All right. Commissioner Snoops, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Bittner?
Corporal, and again, since the owners have put their new practices and policies in place after meeting with members of your agency, you haven't been called.
Correct.
Thank you. Have you, I guess, have your question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bittner. Thank you, Corporal. I
Thank you.
appreciate you being here tonight. All right, sir, and if we could just get your name too, please.
PFC Doyle.
All right. Is there anything you want to tell the board?
I believe my side partners and my sergeant pretty much touched everything.
Okay. Good. Let's see if the board has any specific questions. Mr. Bittner, do you have any questions first before we go down?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question. How many times have you been out or called on to report any truckers?
Since they opened, probably about 5 or 6 times approximately.
You were there on March 5th, I think you reported. You recall that incident?
Yes.
About midnight? Has it been pretty much the same as been described before? Outside, ruly?
Yeah, during that incident, yes.
Did you have to go into the bar?
I did not make it into the bar, no.
And how many people were involved?
I was dealing with one person, but it sounded like there were multiple people outside. I can't tell you an answer on that.
2 dozen?
I can't.
You can tell me, really.
I don't have a number.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Snoops?
No questions.
Mr. Bittner, I'm assuming nothing.
Just again, PFC Duell, since the meeting, since they've installed additional cameras outside, additional security protocol, the no tolerance policy, the parking signs prohibited, you haven't had any issue, correct?
No issue.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, PFC.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Unless the board has any additional questions of the officers, I think we can let them go.
Do we hear one? Okay.
I have no questions.
No, I have no other
All right,
questions.
you all are
Thank you.
excused. Thank you for being here
Very
tonight.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, Mr. Bittner, we'll let you proceed by way of rebuttal, anything you have, and then I'm going to turn it over to the board to ask questions of your clients.
Certainly, I don't have any rebuttal
great.
of the officers.
Great. Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions of Mr. Bittner or his clients?
I do. Mr. Tucker, how would you describe your business?
I would describe it as a local, family, pet-friendly bar that, that is trying to figure out its course. That's how I would describe it.
Okay, and do you think you've got there?
I think we've tried to get there to try to be the dog-friendly, kid-friendly, come there at 10 a.m. breakfast on a Saturday. We had that going for a little while. And then the food trucks that we had, and it's not blame on them, it's blame on myself for not just going out and purchasing our own food truck. But the biggest common denominator that's an issue in this bar has been food. So with having food there, now we have a food truck that we've purchased, should be hopefully delivered tomorrow. We've asked our patrons since day one what their thoughts were, feedback, and we've listened to every single problem we've ever had, and we've addressed it immediately. So I think that we are there with the food truck. And to be honest with you, the entertainment license and being able to do things that are more focused during the week than are focused all at night. We don't want to be a late night bar. We don't want to be open all night long. That's not my goal. To be honest with you, I haven't slept since we opened this bar. And I want to sleep. I want to go to sleep. I have twins that are 12. I don't want to deal with that headache. But between the food and having some karaoke and some trivia and some of these things, I think that that's the perfect fit for this bar. And that's the goal that we're aiming at.
Okay. The food truck specifically, it's parked outside, obviously. I mean,
Yes.
your patrons have to leave the bar, go to the truck?
No.
How does that work?
So we had it set up since day one. We had the food truck parked directly next to the building. So we had it connected, hardwired into our system. So we would place the order inside. The order would go out to the food truck, and then there's a runner who would bring the food into the establishment. Then we had a complaint, which was the food truck was not. It had to be 10 feet off the building. I don't understand it. I've talked to many other food truck owners and businesses, and they all said the same thing. They never heard of it before. At that point, we had no place to put the truck because it was 10 foot off, and we're already limited to parking. So we ended up having the food truck that we had there for 7 months part ways with us, and they moved on. And now here we are. We've tried multiple food trucks from Jimmy's Seafood to all these other ones, and it just didn't work. So what we decided to do was we bought our food truck. We have a plan to submit, which we'll talk about that the next step. We have a plan to submit. The food truck will sit 10 foot off the establishment, and the food will go through the system and be delivered into the establishment directly to the patron.
Okay. So I'm good for now.
Thank you.
But I may have another question. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Duffy?
Yes, I don't know if Mr. Bender wants to answer this directed to your clients, but you mentioned the fact that they had initially in your briefing a breathalyzer machine. I want to know how that is being utilized and just how it's being utilized within your establishment.
Sure.
The breathalyzer machine.
I believe they just purchased that.
Correct.
That was a suggestion. I think they just purchased it 2 or 3 days ago.
Correct.
And it's my understanding, and Mr. Tucker can clarify this if I'm inaccurate, is that they'll have signage up there that it's available.
Okay.
And so any patron who feels they may not be safe to drive can ask to use it. But again, in that same vein, they have Taxi Mike, who will take anybody where
That
they
was my
wanna go.
follow-up question.
Yes.
Is that the purpose of Texas Mike being there for individuals that can't utilize that for the sole purpose of over-serving alcohol?
So we've had Taxi Mike in place since day one. To be honest with you, we've had Taxi Mike since day one, but it wasn't a full-time thing. We tried a Monday through Sunday, we've been testing as much as we can. So Taxi Mike has been in place for the majority, full-time. Our full-time is what we call Wednesday through Sunday, and really Wednesday through Saturday is what we found is our peak of importance. Taxi Mike is also 15 minutes away, and he's come to the bar on his day off sometimes to drive somebody home if needed.
Okay.
On the signs when you pull into the bar, and at the parking signs, it says, "Don't drive, let us know." And we've instilled that since day one, and it's also free. We don't charge anybody, it's based on tips only, and Taxi Mike will take people home. Sometimes you'll go to the bar and you might see a couple cars or whatever. The cars are left there at night because people don't even take a chance anymore for the majority. They will just get right in Taxi Mike will take them home, and in the morning they get a ride back to the bar and they get their car, and Taxi Mike has been probably the biggest success out of them all.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very, very much.
I appreciate it.
Not only that, but for being proactive in
Thanks.
all the activities that you have done
Right.
to address all the complaints and everything else. I want to just personally say thank you for being proactive.
I appreciate it, and I promise you, we have genuinely tried to address every single thing. As soon as it happens, we do our best to address it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the breath analyzer machine?
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Snoops?
Have you seen a result, any results, you've made all these changes that make up with your client's health? Do you see much difference?
So I wish Sergeant Duncan was still here, because Sergeant Duncan.
He's in the back.
Can he come up for it? Is that okay? Because, so Sergeant Duncan,
There's something to add, yeah.
what we did was, we called, after we had this incident and we had this problem, what I did was, Sergeant Duncan's the one who suggested it. Sergeant Duncan came, we spoke outside that night, and he said, we need to figure what it is out. We had our meeting between Sergeant Duncan, Lieutenant Shanahan, and the acting captain?
Yep, acting captain.
Acting
Gilmer.
captain. So we had our meeting, and we went through their agenda, and we had a discussion. So the difference is, and the reason I wanted to bring him back up is because he made a comment when we were done with the meeting, which other than saying he was proud of us, which made me proud and I was super happy, he said that he spun his head all weekend long and he couldn't understand what was going on because when he walked into that bar, he didn't know one person that was in there as far as the regular troublemakers. We have a group, Facebook group page between the employees, and we have a ban list, and our ban list is over 40 people strong right now. We put it in there. I love Pasadena. Pasadena's been great to me in many ways, but there's also drama, and we know who the ones that are trouble are. So we've never put financial before security and safety ever. So when it comes down to have we seen a difference? Yes, we've seen a huge difference. The zero tolerance is in play, which means when you go to a bar, you can turn around and somebody's gonna get drunk or rowdy or this and that, and they'll turn around and the security or the staff will say, hey, calm down, relax. We noticed that any problems that we've had were based off of already having a warning. So what we did was we did a zero tolerance, and the zero tolerance has been in play since the issues that we had. And what it does is, as soon as they raise their voice or as soon as there's anything that's any kind of outrageous act, they are asked to leave. So yes, we've seen a huge difference in the way that we are handling that. Thank you. Sorry.
Do any commissioners have any additional questions before I give Mr. Bittner the last word?
Yes, I just want to know why Sergeant Duncan was called up. The question that he was to answer.
So he was called up. He was called up to make sure that I was. I don't know. I wasn't over speaking for him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to hear from Sergeant Duncan.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
And if I might add, he's, again, in our line of work, we have our frequent flyers, our regulars that we deal with, and I did make that comment to him because, normally we can walk into an establishment and you see normally the same group of people hanging around that are kind of stirring things up or kind of like right in the middle. And every time I was over at Tucker's, I didn't see any of them. And that's what was kind of confusing to me, and that's kind of what got me to the point of saying, we need to get together, get our heads together and figure out what's going on here, because, you know, I'd have been happy to say, these are the people that are causing your problems, you need to get them out of here, but that wasn't the case here, so.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Duncan.
Yep.
And I brought him back up because he's making us look so good right now. Sorry. God, sorry about that.
All right, any additional questions from the commissioners? All right, Mr. Bittner, we'll give you the last word, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I don't think there's much more that can be said. I ask you to use your discretion. You see what they've done. They were shut down on April the 2nd by Lieutenant Shanahan. That really, I can tell you from my conversations with my clients, was really a kick in the stomach. They had to send all the staff home with pay. It was all over social media about it. It impacted their reputation. And you can see that after that, what they've done, they've reached out to everyone, patrons, community, law enforcement, your office, and we would ask you just to simply put them to their proof and give them an opportunity to continue going, because they know that the board and law enforcement is watching them. In fact, they have a letter posted in their office from Ms. Hagner to that effect. So if they're not going to get it now, they never are, and I suggest that they have. And given, you heard Sergeant Duncan, he said it most articulate, that they had some growing pains, and I think they've gotten through it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bittner. Mr. Chairman.
Just give me a second here. Yeah, I think the fact that Lieutenant Shanahan did shut down your business, I think got our attention too.
Yeah.
And I think immediately we decided to call you and have this hearing to find out exactly what was going on. Because as you look at it, and we should have been more diligent because you were in your learning process, there's like 40 calls that the police made, and it goes back to November of 2021, all the way up to April of 2022. So you're talking, at least at this point, 6 months of incidents, 40, they're fighting, there's parking issues. And as I look at this, your establishment becomes a different place after midnight. I don't know, I'm sure you know that.
It had for a while, yes, without a doubt.
And I'm thinking all the good things you're doing and all the good things we're seeing in these exhibits about all the great stuff that's going on there.
Thank you.
You know, virtually is being overshadowed by this.
To be honest with you, I wish I can close. And if you don't mind me saying,
Yeah.
I wish I can close at 12. To be honest with you, I wish I can close at 10. The problem is that without, and I'm just going to say what it is, the problem is without anything entertainment-wise, and I haven't brought it to your attention, there's no blame I'm putting out there, but with having a jukebox and having a pool table, and that is the only form of entertainment I'm allowed to have currently, I can't do anything during the week at 7 o'clock. We did one form of a bingo, and it was a killer. It killed it, and it was amazing. And we sold out tickets the next 3 days with 100 tickets. We want to be a daytime, nighttime bar. I care about breakfast. That's what I care about. I want to be open at 7 a.m. That's been my goal since day one, even though we're opening at 10 on the weekends. But my goal is to be a daytime bar. If that bar was closed at 10, I would love to be home. I'm not saying that I want you to change my curfew, my hours right now.
Thank you for clarifying.
Right? I'm not saying that, but the problem is, and while we learn from it, that bar, 80+% of the revenue happens between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. So I'm so struck that I have no option. I can't do a DJ. I can't do a microphone. I can't do dancing. I can't do anything. So I'm so torn because I would love for you guys to say, you know what, yeah, let's get the entertainment license done, which I finally worked on zoning and got approval. As soon as we have that, to be honest with you, I'll close the bar myself before 12. I don't want to be there. I don't want to deal with it. But while we noticed there was a problem there, the one thing that was not brought up or discussed, and I am not talking negative about the Anne Arundel Police because I've supported them since day one. Since the day we cut the locks in that building, I've been communicating with that department. This is what wasn't said. We had off-duty officers at this bar.
Well, that wasn't the chairman's question, so.
Right. But
we don't need to.
the reason I'm saying that,
That wasn't his question.
All right. So I'm being told to shut up.
That's not responsive to his question.
All right.
I'm not even sure what my question was.
Good.
But,
Thank you.
so, hopefully this is all in the past.
100%.
It's good that you're moving forward. Great testimony from the sergeant. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, hopefully everything goes well. But are we done with comments?
We're done
at all?
with comments.
Everybody's comment?
Now's
Need a
the
motion,
appropriate time
pretty
for a
much?
motion.
Yeah, we have to look at, I don't know where I did, so much documentation here. But looking at the issues that you were called upon here, the 4 counts.
Mr. Chairman.
Here you are. Thank you. All basically came about on one particular day that I think the time also was when the bar was closed. But there were 4 counts, and it's illegal conduct, people being drunk, public welfare, et cetera. I'm going to propose that we fine Tucker's $500 per incident, plus court costs, and I'll look for a second. Okay, seeing no second, I'll turn it over to one of the commissioners who might have a better thought.
I would go ahead and second the motion of the $500 per incident.
All right, we have a second on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion's carried.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Stay safe.
That's it. Okay, the hearing, again, May 24th, 2021 is now adjourned.